welcome everybody to the December meeting of the Library Marketing Book Club. Thank you so much for coming. I hope everybody's having a wonderful holiday. And I got my microphone fixed, so I hope it sounds a little better than it has in some previous meetings. Yeah, where I didn't have a thing that boosted the signal, but it's going well now. So the book this month that we read was Jenna Kutcher's How Are You Really? Jenna is a podcaster, a blogger who's been doing those things for a long time. The Gold Digger podcast, if you haven't heard it, please give it a chance. It's a really, really wonderful podcast with a lot of ideas and things that are very well aligned with the book. So what I thought we'd do today is I will just walk through the book, walk through the things. Jenna provided these great discussion questions. So we'll stop at some points and drop some of these questions and see if anybody has anything to share. But if anybody has anything to share along the way, please do. Yeah, let's see how this goes. So book is divided into three parts. So the first part is who are you really? The second part is who you have and who has you. And the third part, I'm looking for my note on what the third part is, and I can't find that title. What you're going to do about it. So the book opens up, and the book is kind of a memoir. So it's a neat story about Jenna and some pretty cool things that she did. Kind of brought her to where she was. She was somebody who was working in an office, and things along the way took her into, now she has a 7-figure business. And it's pretty interesting how it's been a very interesting roller coaster ride. So she's real vulnerable, tells some very personal things that affected her journey. But the first thing she starts out with, and really the theme of the book, is how are you really? So it's asking yourself the uncomfortable questions, asking the difficult questions, that we don't always stop to ask ourselves. So, what inspires you? What makes you mad? What makes you laugh? And so she talks about that to start off, as, a lot of times things are just flying and going past us. And we don't really think about what kind of things are really important to us. And she has a lot of prompts throughout the book that let you tell her, that let you kind of think about these things for yourself and what kind of things you do. So she stops several points and says, how are you really? And then here's a couple writing prompts. Something that she talks about a lot too, that she starts off in the book and talks about a lot later, is that you don't need to be perfect. Not everything needs to be perfect. You can, you just need to stop and listen to yourself. And one thing in the early part of the book is this idea of golden handcuffs. So, a lot of us, especially in our early careers, you're thinking about, well, what's that next move? What's that next thing? And we hear this a lot, and I hear this a lot. I think you do too. Many of you do too. In our world, in the library marketing world, it's not exactly like golden handcuffs, but there is some things that she talks about where it's, how big is your team? How many people do you have? How much do you have to do with things? And there's a lot of times where I think in our world that we think, the more we have and the more people we have and the more responsibility and the bigger budgets we have, that is what we're always trying to look for. But is it really what we're trying to look for? Or is that something that is what she calls a supposed to in life? So the first prompt that she has in the book that would be an interesting one if anybody has something to talk about is, have you built your life on a stack of supposed tos? Are there areas of your life where you're staying stuck because it's conventional or convenient? Where are you simply going with the flow? What are some life changes you need to make? So does anybody have thoughts about that, about, building yourself on supposed tos or expectations? What are your thoughts about that? Anyone?
I'll
Oh, hey,
say,
Lori.
since I'm at the end of my career,
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah.
it's been very interesting. My parents were teachers, so they expected me to go to college. That was expected. My mom even, I mean, I was a later baby.
Hmm.
So I was the youngest, and it made their experiences through the depression, whatever, made it a lot different for me. I didn't always understand. But even at that point, it was like in the 70s or 80s when I went to college. It was one of those things that it's like you have to have something to fall back on.
Yeah, right. Sure, of
Right.
course.
And my older sister was librarian, so it's all her fault. I blame her all the time. You know
Yeah.
what? We have a lot to talk about. She's still living. She's 76. So
Yeah.
we talk a lot about the library. She's a very vital person in my life. And but I decided I wanted to be in a public library. So I went
Hmm.
straight for my master's. That was like that was no question. My
Yeah.
love life, on the other hand, it's been an absolute mess. And at this point, it's just me and my dog, and I'm okay. But I don't know. It just to keep it short anyway, which is
Sure.
not easy for me.
That's all
But
right.
we had this, thankfully isn't going to go out too far, but we had a person take over just a little bit ago, not immediate supervisor, thankfully, but somebody who's very controlling,
Mm,
dictatorship. And
that's difficult.
no, oh my God, I thought, I don't want to end my career this way. You know, it's like I've been doing this literally 40 years, and I don't, I still have dreams for the county library. I want to
Sure.
see things progress. And it was like, I have never had the wind taken out of my sails like it was the
Mm,
last couple of years. It is going to change at the end of next year.
okay.
That supervisory input is going away. And I am
Okay.
so thankful, because we have so many thoughts and ideas and nobody wants to hear them. And
Mm.
it's like, this is where I want to end my career, kind of thing. I want to be working with the courts, getting forms out there for the public, so make it easier for them, because the law is unbelievably complicated.
Yeah.
And even the websites from the different places are unbelievably complicated. It's like,
Yeah.
I understand we can't make it super simple. It's not going to happen, but we can make it easier for people. That's the least we can do.
Yeah.
So career-wise, since this new development that just found out about like 2 weeks ago, for sure, it's going to be messy this next year, because
Mhm.
we are tied in with the local university, and that's going to go away. So we're going to be part of the
Mm.
county again, which is really
Ah,
good. I mean,
that's
we've
good.
always been part of the county, but there's a lot of opportunity there. Really, I'm excited, but I know it's going to be overwhelming switching, technologies and whatever, to
Yeah.
go with whatever the county has. So, but
Yeah. Well, that's nice.
this is kind of where I wanted to go anyway, but it wasn't exactly the way I wanted to get there. But,
Sure.
I never thought there'd be, an obstacle thrown in the way of that. At
Yeah.
this point in time, it's like,
I know.
because
Yeah.
I feel like I still want to work at least 4 more years, and maybe longer than that, because I
Yeah.
love what I do. As long
Yeah.
as my body holds out, I'll keep
Yeah.
coming.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I know it's a good point. I think that's the thing that a lot of people, even in this context of, what are you supposed to do and all those things. A lot of us, I would say choosing to be in the library industry, we could choose to be in other industries. We could choose to be other places and chasing after different things. But I think making this choice is an interesting choice that kind of does match some of that. So yeah, I think that's great. And yeah, and what something that I saw here. Oh, hey, Bobby. Uh yeah, defaulting to the conventional. Used to follow. Yeah. Yeah. Supposed to go to law school, but instead happy in a public library. Yeah. Yeah, I think in the book Jenna talks about she was in medical school. She was in pre-med, and then she was happy not being in there. So changed a lot. And yeah, I think that that building that life on supposed to's can be not so fulfilling, and that's what she's talking about in there. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a good example, Bobby. But yeah, I think something that that we talk about. Yeah, well, let me just keep rolling with the book. So next little section here is about going after your goal, and it's about I mean, she's obviously, when she's talking about this, well, obviously if you read the book, if you hadn't had a chance, so when she's talking about a lot of this early part of the book, it's definitely very young in her career and different kind of things she wants to do. So she talks about getting a camera, and one of the kind of central stories to the book is about her getting this $300 camera, setting up a vision board, saying that even though she was working for this HR company and she had a pretty high role, even for a younger person, she was trying to put together this vision board. The laminator at work where she was printing it jammed, and that was the time where she was discovered and had to reveal this thing to somebody else, who she was nervous that this person was gonna like blow her cover, but it turned out they cheered her on. So it's a really neat story about how to do things when you have a goal that you want to go after, and a lot about starting small, starting ridiculously tiny. Doesn't have to be huge things. So she talks about that. She talks about trying something to kind of listen to what you really want to do, and not just, again, this is still along those lines of following other people's ideas and getting so much advice. We get so much advice from people outside. Yeah, baby steps, right? We get so much from people outside that we never stop to think if it fits us. So she talks about like getting Marie Kondo's book and trying to follow all the principles because everybody was doing it and it would be great, but then wasn't really listening to, is that really something that was fitting them? Is that really something that was fitting her, that she wanted to do? So so she talks about that, talks about getting advice. And then the next part of the book, she talks about how she really ended up, when she got into being this wedding photographer, quitting her 9 to 5, but ending up working 24/7. So sometimes, you have to still be able to set boundaries and know which rules to break. And, just because you're going for this dream, you could end up falling into something that's actually even more taxing than you might have expected. Even though she loved it, it was still something that really prevented her from everything. So then she talks about the pandemic, which is a big theme of the book, and how that gave her an opportunity, and gave a lot of us opportunity, to discover some different things and take some different times to try things out. And that's where she tried watercolors and and ended up finding that that was something she really enjoyed. And then she started putting those online and started selling them. And it wasn't something that she wanted to make another business, but she wanted to see, how can you find ways to soften the edges of the rest of your life with play? So let me pull up. And Lisa, you've been self-employed before. Yeah. Holidays. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't have the same schedule. It can be really tough when it's all you. And, she gets into a little bit later how she eventually found a pretty interesting balance. But so, so the next thing that I thought was an interesting prompt, yeah, soften the edges of your life with play. Yeah, Christina, I know it is pretty good, right? It helps you kind of relax and find something enjoyable and not really worry about those kind of things. So another prompt that she provided is, what can you do in 5 minutes just for you? What's a thing that once sparked your curiosity and joy that you've pushed aside in the busyness of your life? And how can you bring it back? And either when you're reading the book or when you're hearing this now, anybody have something? Lori, in a choir. Yeah, that was a job. So yeah, so you quit. Does anybody have anything that's that's kind of a thing that you used to like, and boy, you haven't really done it in a while? Yeah. Those choirs can be brutal, especially in Midwest, right? But anybody think about that? Like, what's something that you really enjoy doing that you've kind of gotten away from, that maybe you could do even just a little bit to get it back? Anybody have any thoughts or think about that at all?
I'm laughing because every year my New Year's resolution is to restart posting on this other blog that I used to do before I started Super Library Marketing that I dropped for the library marketing blog. And it's
Mm,
the Bite from the Past blog.
mm.
So I have all of these vintage cookbooks. I have a collection of
Ah,
old cookbooks. Some of them date back to the late 1700s. And they're in a special cupboard
wow.
in my kitchen where they can be like preserved. And I used to cook out of them, which doesn't sound all that exciting, but you have to remember a cookbook from the late 1700s, there's no oven with like a temperature on it. And they didn't have measuring cups. Yeah, it's like put it in a hot oven and then until it does this thing and a handful of this. And they didn't have baking soda. Like it was all this other stuff that you have to kind of translate. And I really loved doing that. And I am always like, I want to get back to it, but it is time consuming.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I learned. Food blogging is very time consuming, especially like the photographing of the food. And
Yeah.
maybe I could figure out a way to do it that's much more simple. Because don't we all get mad that we have to like scroll 3/4 of the way down the page to get to the recipe?
Yes. Oh, I hate that so much. I
Maybe
hate
I can
that so
figure out a way
much.
to not do that and not be like all the other food bloggers. Because it was just fun. It was just like a fun thing.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, maybe there's a way where you can, again, just kind of spend a couple minutes doing some things like that. And he doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be, everything. It doesn't have to be you spending, all that time being perfect and getting it done and getting it published and getting that. Maybe it's just bringing out those cookbooks and, enjoying them once in a while.
I
So
don't know
yeah,
if anyone else
that's
has
cool.
this thing too where you feel like your work persona bleeds into your fun stuff. So like if I started that up again, I would have to fight against the urge to I have to post every Monday. I
Yeah.
have to be consistent. I just have to drop that part too.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just cooking. Maybe it's just cooking a recipe from it. Maybe it doesn't have to be posting every time. Maybe you can get away with that.
But you know what, Chris, when I'm out and about and I see somebody lost in a store or on the sidewalk and they look lost, it's like, what do you need to find?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. Yes. Very much.
Triggers, I
Yes.
can't help it. But you
Always
know
the
what? I
librarian.
enjoy it. It does that as much as my job to a certain extent doesn't feel like a job because I enjoy what
Yeah.
I do. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Bobby, nice compliment. Enjoyed your story showing Buckeyes. Yes, very nice. Yes. Oh, I love Buckeyes. Very good. Yes, wonderful. So awesome. Well, that's great. I did
Thank
see if I
you,
could.
Chris. I think you sort of got at an important point there, though,
Sure.
that quest for perfection can really derail a nice little
Yeah.
hobby. It's,
Right.
I have so many things. I have, mom's old recipes and grandma's old recipes. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to scan those and do something with it. And then I'm like, yes, but it will have to be indexed and blah, blah, blah. And yeah. Um, and yeah, I think that's the professional impulse and that getting away from that and getting out of your own way is that's something I really need to work at.
Yeah, Lisa, it comes up later in the book too. And if I can take a second, I would love to share this TikTok that I saw. Love TikTok. That that's really neat. And it's about this idea of like not it's sort of about that idea of perfection. And it's also that idea of starting something tiny. So I don't know what this is called. She mentions it. Oh, Kaizen, it's called. So if you ever heard of Kaizen, it's this organization principle. But I thought this was pretty cool. So let me share. And
Day 2, 3 more sticks. Let's start with 3 sticks.
see if we can get this back.
I would start with 3 sticks on day 1. Day 2, 3 more sticks. This pile has been sitting here for 6 weeks. Your comment and a morning temperature above freezing motivated me to get it taken care of all in one go. But I'll share how I would break it down Kaizen style. Day 3, 4 sticks. Now the sticks are getting harder to find, so it's 2 handfuls. Next day, an arm load. The next day I'm feeling good about the progress, so I'll do 2 arm loads. Day 7, I would do 3 arm loads. With Kaizen, you never have to escalate. You can just keep doing tiny increments forever. But at a certain point, once you have some momentum, you might just look at the pile and go, I can crush this, and do the rest in 10 minutes. Now, household clutter is hard because it requires a lot of decisions about where stuff goes. Doing a little bit every day, limiting yourself to just 1 or 2 decisions, makes the process manageable. I hope that if you try this, you feel a little lightening of the load. Your comment gave me an opportunity to experience that. Thank you.
Let me find out how to stop sharing. Okay, I hope you could hear the audio. I thought that was pretty cool. It really inspired me to think about, oh yeah, I've got something that's like a pile that's been sitting there for 2 months and I've never done anything because I just, oh my God, I have to do this whole thing. But just, 1 stick the day 1 and 2 sticks day 2. And, so I thought that was kind of a neat illustration of the doing tiny and not necessarily perfect and just get a little bit at a time.
Kaizen and a verb?
I
need
don't
to
know. I
Kaizen
think
my
it's a
wardrobe.
noun. It may get
Too many
verbized,
clothes,
but I think
need
it's
to
a
go
noun.
through them, and I need to meet
Yeah.
this, with the pandemic and with what's the stress at work. I get home, I'm in my PJs, get something to eat, let the dog out, and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
So-
that's enough. So it's,
But you know what? Things are changing a little. So thankfully, the stress is getting a little bit lighter here.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no, so it's great. So the next part of the book, she talked about a lot about things that were very personal, very vulnerable. She had during the book, she talks twice that she lost a baby. She had 2 miscarriages. And she talks about a lot about that, about how certainly that affected her life and her decisions and how she did things. She talked about going from, before not wanting kids to wanting kids and then losing a baby. And a couple concepts that were in this part were the sunk cost fallacy. So if you've put a lot of time and a lot of effort into something, you cling to those things and you really don't want to give them up. But it's a fallacy. Once that cost is gone, it's gone. You can't get that back. So yes, it's disappointing that you may have spent a lot of time on something, but look to changing your goals. Change is okay. It's okay to move forward. It's okay to, kill your darlings. We hear that. So and then she also talks about this other viral social experience she had where she posted something about her who is self-described curvy girl, and she has a husband who's really into working out and he's Mr. Six-Pack, and she posted something about feeling comfortable and feeling okay, and she got a bunch of great comments and she got a bunch of hate and a bunch of mean comments, but a lot of it was more about getting centered, about being kind to yourself. And what kind of things can you do to make yourself feel good about yourself and not beat yourself up? And this particular concept, something I've been thinking a lot about since we had the library marketing communications conference a few weeks ago, and at the board, we had a board meeting before that, and something that we talked about was, well, what kind of things do some of the newcomers? There was a person on the board that hadn't been to, had been to some of the meetings and some of the conferences before, but hadn't really, been as tightly into things. And they asked for feedback, like, what do you do? And one thing she mentioned was something that she notices that a lot of library marketers are very apologetic and they're very self-deprecating, almost to the point where it becomes distracting. And, one term that I think a lot of us use, that I hear a lot, is this term of accidental marketer. And I think it's definitely has a place, but I think sometimes it becomes something that almost like devalues ourselves, like, saying, oh, I'm accidental. I'm not a real marketer. I don't really know what I'm doing. But some of the things that some of the people who weren't in marketing and then came into this role are doing are so far beyond what so many other marketers are doing that, it's just, I wish people would just start calling themselves marketers and kind of divorcing from this idea of accidental. So, that's something I've been thinking about a lot. I want to write something about it because I think it's important. So yeah, I think a lot of people do, and there's nothing wrong with not having been a marketer and then getting into marketing, and I hope there's nothing wrong the other way with having been a marketer and then being marketing at a library, because I don't feel that there is. I think it's a wonderful place to do marketing. So, here's another prompt. If the words you said to yourself and about yourself were audible for the world to hear, would you be proud of them? How can you challenge yourself to be kinder and gentler with your whole self, including your words? And then, since again, this part of the book is a lot about body, what are 5 ways you can compliment your body today? Now, I'm not going to ask you to say 5 words to compliment your body unless you really want to. But, what do you think about that, about being kinder and gentler to yourself? And what are your thoughts about that and what you see in, whether it's in libraries and among librarians, among library marketing? Any thoughts about that?
Can I say, from what I said earlier about my personal love life has not been wonderful. Had it not been what it was, I married my second husband. He's been deceased 9 years now, so I do miss him. But because of him, he and I adopted 2 half sisters from Pennsylvania here. And they were in 2 different homes. And so that's a better way to phrase that, isn't it? It sounds a little more positive, like they're a little crazy. The one gets it. That's what the family is about. The older one, believe it or not. The younger one, we just started talking again. So because she had lots of issues, not her fault per se, but now it's time for her to, grab a hold of those and move forward. Had my life not been as messy as it was in some ways, I never would have. And I wouldn't have had kids in this way. I didn't have kids. So
that's nice. No, it's very positive. Yeah.
So better spin on that, right? And I'm not spinning it to spin it. It truly, I feel that way.
Yeah, it's looking at it in a positive way and looking at it in good self-talk. Yes, Christina, very well said. As you think, so shall you be. Yeah. So yeah, if you think about, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not, I'm kind of muddling my way along here. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I will say it sometimes, but we should be nicer to ourselves. And because we are, we're not. Yeah, we deserve that. I mean, we work hard. And like you said, Christine, if you say those things, it's going to make you feel more positive. So, oh yeah, yoga. Yes. Positive self-talk on the mat. Yes. Yeah. We leave everything off the mat. We leave everything outside. We don't bring that onto the mat with us. Yes. And we'll talk about yoga a little bit later too. So, so the next section kind of goes from a little bit at the end of that part into the next part of the book. So there's a little bit about, she does talk about having her first baby, which is wonderful. She meets with a mentor who helped her kind of envision her future. And she's talking about letting your dreams come true. And this idea of what would you do if money wasn't a factor? So, so that comes into play in the book. Then she talks about, in the next couple of chapters, following your dream is great, but what about the people around you? So you want to follow your dream, but what about your partner? What about your friends? What about your family? So do they share the vision that you do? That's wonderful. If they don't quite share it, how can you help them to see that it's important to you without taking away from your relationship and actually building a relationship? She talks about building an authentic community and meeting with a friend. In college, a lot of colleges around drinking. A lot of social activities around drinking. She talks about meeting up with somebody in a place, not for a drink, but for coffee, and then building this wonderful friendship that was based on coffee and faith, as she talks about it. So it's a really nice story in there. And then the next part is a really, really big part of a lot of what she talks about, even beyond the book. And that's asking for help. So, the one thing she says that changed everything is her saying, I need help. She had somebody who was really persistent, coming after her saying, hey, I'm a personal assistant and I would really love to work with you. I'd love to help you. I'd love to find ways to do things for you. And she ignored this person a couple times, finally got into a point where she really was feeling just very stressed out. And stopped and said, you know what, I do need help. And she let this young woman help her out with her email. She gave her her email password and said, hey, I just want you to help me kind of keep my email clear and keep my email going. And then I think it was the next day or the day after, she went to check in her inbox just to see how things were doing, and it was all empty. And she was like, oh my God. She handled everything, and she looked at the responses, and the responses were exactly the kind of things that she would have said, and the kind of things that she would have done, because this woman, did her homework, and she, they had a good conversation and met with each other. So this idea of asking for help is super, super important. I know I don't do it often. I know I look, even though I have a team of people, I will try and do things that I really should just be asking help for it. And one of her really nice phrases was, asking for help demonstrates trust, and it builds bonds of intimacy and friendship. So not asking for help is not necessarily a way to show that you're more powerful or more secure or more together. Asking for help demonstrates that you trust other people, and trust is usually, and we know in the library world, trust is what we build everything on. So here's the next prompt was, can you identify an area of your life where you're dropping balls most often? Without judgment, get really honest with where you're struggling to keep up, or what's staying at the bottom of your to-do list. Who might be waiting in the wings to help that you're not maybe listening to now? Where can you let go? Who can you let in to share your load? So what does anybody have to say about this idea of doing it things yourself and not asking for help, or times that you might have asked for help that it really opened up and really realized that something was really great? This really made a big advance because I asked for help.
Well, I'll go.
Yeah, Lisa.
We just got a free Canva Pro membership
Oh,
for the
nice.
library.
Awesome.
And we had been kind of all working in our own little Canva silos on our own personal free accounts. And I will say we just added that on, so we're still kind of working through the mechanics of sharing things, but it's really been a great way to distribute these small little tasks that need to be done, like Instagram posts, and they need this, they need that, and taking that off of my plate and allowing other people the ability to do that with, again, a certain set of brand tools that come with that Canva Pro. So that, I think, is going to be really useful in the coming year as we're all trying to do 6 jobs.
Right. Yeah. Because more work keeps coming, but we don't get more people to do it usually. So we don't have more time. We have the same amount of time we always do. So yeah, it's a great point, Lisa. Yeah. I mean, some of those little things. I mean, we've been doing it here too, where we have a graphic designer who does, tons of wonderful stuff for us, but we just have the one, and time is limited and resources are limited, and a lot of projects come in. And so we'll use a lot of our other tools. We use Library Aware for a lot of different things that we do, that are just, it's set up so nicely to do things like, we're doing book recommendations. So we're finding different ways to use the book recommendations, go into Library Aware and get things that are printable for some of our business partner groups, that way they can share some of that stuff with us. And we use Canva a little bit too, because sometimes Canva is just a great way to just get it in. And anyway, just in case anybody doesn't know, I heard somebody else talking about this in another library context recently. Libraries can get a free Canva Pro subscription. So don't pass that up. That is a wonderful opportunity. It's a great tool to have. Even if you have other tools, it's really wonderful. So,
and sometimes you have to try more than once.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it doesn't come easily.
We got rejected our first time, and the second time I sent them the citation to the Illinois library law that showed that we were a nonprofit that did not charge, and that worked.
Yeah. And the more libraries that do it, the more they'll start to just fall and learn that libraries are, in fact, nonprofit organizations. Yes. I mean, maybe most of them, but something you don't want to give up. So, definitely asking for help is important. Something else that we're doing is we are starting to have our staff not my staff, but library staff write blog articles for the library because they're the ones that are the subject matter experts. They know we shouldn't be writing all the blog articles. We have other things that we can be doing that are more marketing. They can create the content. We can help them get the content on there. It's similar to Milwaukee. If you've all seen Milwaukee Public Library was on the Today Show, I think it was this morning, with their wonderful TikTok account. That is all done by not their marketing department, not their communications department. It's all done distributed among the library. So getting help from library staff can be very, very useful. They know the things that are going on. So the last couple of parts of the book, she tells another story that again is pretty central to what she does, to a lot of what she talks about. Her parents had this big plot of land, and her dad mowed the lawn all the time, and it was the kids' job. There were 4 of them. It was the kids' job to rake up the grass clippings on this huge yard. So it came to a point where the family got, just a little bit of extra money, not thousands or anything, but just a few $100s maybe. And they told the kids, listen, we can either buy a bagging attachment for the mower so you don't have to rake anymore, or we can go to the Wisconsin Dells, which I have not been to, but I hear is a pretty fun place to go to. And so the kids chose, let's go to the Wisconsin Dells. And while, still they would have to be raking up grass, for her, it was a huge turning point. And this was the idea, was you never know kind of what some of these decisions in life are going to lead to when you choose a certain path. She ended up they stayed at a hotel that had a diving board. She ended up turning her gymnastic skills into diving skills, ended up going to college with, on the diving as diving being a way that she was getting in. And that's where she met her future husband. And that's where, you kind of brought everything to the path where she went. She always wonders what would have happened if we would have chosen that bagging mower instead. But she
Snowball,
didn't.
Chris.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it really did. Yeah, these paths, these small decisions, you don't know where they're going to lead. So, and she had a really neat saying in here, talking about, take a few minutes to dream. And she said, I think she quoted someone who said, we trade today's worries for tomorrow's wonder. So, you're trading what you're worrying about today for all the possibilities that you could have tomorrow. And I thought that's pretty neat. The last part of the book, she goes into, what are you going to do about all this, and gives some advice. She talks about Brooke Shields, how, I know Brooke Shields has had some different controversial opinions perhaps, but Brooke Shields, the story she was talking about was that Brooke Shields went through 8 rounds of in vitro fertilization before she finally was able to conceive. And when she was talking to somebody else, the woman was saying, well, I'm on my 7th time. And she said, well, how can you just not give up? And she's like, well, if Brooke could do it, then so could I. So it was the point of that chapter was about sharing your story and how important it is to share your story with others, because you don't know who that might affect and who that might help along the way. And then again, she brings back this idea, Lisa, like we talked about earlier, of showing up imperfectly. There's no other option. You can't show up perfect all the time. And the best is the enemy of the good. Potential problems and desires for the perfect are become an excuse to procrastinate. So yes, perfect is the enemy of done. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I mean, perfection is a way to say, well, I can't start this because I can't finish it 100% correct. And that kind of goes back to that thing with the sticks and the pile and the leaves. And you don't have to get it all spotless today. Couple sticks today, couple sticks tomorrow, and keep on moving. So this one prompt was, which of your ideas are stuck in your head and going nowhere? What's really holding you back? Where is fear of failure rearing its head? And what's the first imperfect step you can take to make your big unwieldy idea into a you-sized reality? So I could put Angela on the spot and say, what is the first step you could do to making your cooking, your old cookbooks a reality?
I think your idea to just pull those cookbooks out again and look at them, and maybe
Yeah.
just like one cookbook a week, because I got a lot of them and it can get overwhelming.
Yep.
And I have I have these little post-its that are in the shape of the characters from one of the Bronte books. I can't remember which one. I think it's Wuthering Heights, but it might be Jane Eyre. I can't remember. Anyway, they're so cute. And they would make great like little page tabs. I could mark which of the recipes I think I could do.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a therapy session, Chris. You have turned this into a therapy session.
This book is very therapeutic for
It is,
sure.
it is.
This is definitely different, but
yeah.
But yeah, and Angela, you've been, I see you've been playing around with different things on your TikTok account. Maybe just a TikTok video of open up, here's a recipe, and
that is a very good idea. And that is a very good example. I have wanted to do TikTok for a while, and it's not that I don't have ideas, but I'm sure anybody on here who's made TikToks or Reels, it takes time. And I get to the end of my workday, which does not involve posting on TikTok, and I'm like, do I want to spend another hour doing this thing? Like, don't I do enough? So I don't know what possessed me, and I don't post them consistently. I'm doing good about like just whenever I feel like it or have time. Yes,
but it doesn't have to be
TikTok
perfect.
account is starting to be populated with imperfect things too. Like there were a couple on there where like the underlying audio is too loud. Or I forgot and didn't know that they add underlying audio unless you take it off. But I didn't redo it. I just left it there.
The more fun you have, the more you learn, and there's no risk, right? I mean, what's the risk? So So anybody else have anything that they've been what's that first imperfect step? Anybody else been avoiding something? Everybody's been doing everything perfectly. Well, I like to brew beer. And recently I did something, and it frustrates me because it doesn't always turn out perfect. There's a lot of variables when you brew beer, but I'm going to just keep trying. I'm going to just keep trying to make beer. There's a shift where you go from making beer one way to making beer in a more complex way. I've been avoiding that more complex way, but recently I did that. I avoided it, and the product was not good. And even bad beer is not terrible. I mean, it still works. But I want to, I do. So I asked my wife for a couple things that I can do this other method. And a couple things for Christmas. She gave me some cool stuff. So now I have a couple of gadgets to play around with. And I'm just going to start buying some grain and going out there in the garage and heating stuff up. And, if it works, it works. But if I keep avoiding doing it, I'll never get good at it. So I'm just going to play around and be messy and make lots of beer, and I just have to figure out what to do with it all. But I make 5 gallons at a time. That's a lot to drink, but I actually got something to bottle it with, so I can give a lot of it away. So anyway, so pretty good. And then here we're coming now to the end of the book. So last few chapters. Yes, Christina. Yeah, it's tough to come to terms with failing. Yeah, but it is okay. Failing is, there are the kind of maybe becoming more cliched, Edison didn't come up with one way to make a light bulb. He came up with 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. So, failure is important. It's important to have that experience and not, like you said, just like we talked about earlier, Christina, not beat yourself up about it. So why beat yourself up about it? It happens. The lower risk stuff is a great way to do it. So, last few chapters, talks about you may not see your own gifts, but you may be able to see gifts in somebody else. Talks about this cool story about her mother, how when when Jenna was young and was in gymnastics, went to this one gym, and the mom didn't really have the kind of money to pay for everything in the gym easily. So basically bartered her husband to do repairs in the gym and pretty things up in the gym, and her to do some marketing and promotion. So you have to look to find what your own gifts are in order to make something good with it. Talks about investing in yourself, and then the one other one is how to say no. So it's and I think we all encounter this all the time, that you'll get burned out if you don't say no. You have to say no to things. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And she has this idea of finding what's your enough point. And this is where, even when she was doing well with kind of her first iteration of her business, then this is beyond the weddings and beyond all that, but her first iteration of like her blogging and coaching and those kind of things, she was still doing so much. And finally she talked to her husband and said, listen, I know the money is good in what we're doing, and we're getting some income, but I'm not having the time that I want. She said, I would be happier not making as much money and just being able to enjoy if we can afford it. So she wrote out a plan to figure out how they could afford it. And that is what she credits with taking her business from being like just on the edge of like a 6-figure business to then becoming a 7-figure business, but giving her all the time to do the things that she wanted to do, because she figured out a lot of things that would make money without her having to constantly be churning everything all the time. That's pretty much the book. The last part, and I want to see if you will do this with me. I thought this might be interesting to try. So I think, was it Christina? We were talking about yoga. Here, Angela reading The Holiday Trap. Who gets to decide what failure is anyway? Failure is proof you did something. Yes. Yeah. Right. So yeah. You can't, you can't do something without having it be a success or a failure. And if you don't do anything, you have no experience and nothing to show, no result. So the last thing she talked about, one of the last things she talked about in the book, and I'm looking at my phone, not to ignore you all, but I'm looking at my phone for a timer. So I want to see if you want to do this. So she talks about, your mind being silent. And she talks about this idea of a soul shavasana. So shavasana, if you've done yoga, you're probably familiar. If you haven't, shavasana is at the end of the yoga practice. You lay very still in a pose. Usually you lay in this pose called the corpse pose, where you put your arms down at your side, and you just kind of let everything just sink into the mat. And Lisa, Savasana is the best. And you just lay still and quiet. And she talked about how she was the kind of person who, when she first did it, would be like, I really want to be the one who just grabs my stuff and leaves, and like, that's not for me, I'm going to go. But she did it, and that gives you time to think. So look, we have 8 minutes to go. Let's do 5 minutes of quiet. And I don't want you to be looking at email. I don't want you to be multitasking. Can you do 5 minutes of quiet with ourselves and our thoughts? This is weird because we're on a thing, but let's try it. Really willing to try it? Anybody willing to try it? We'll see. Can you just be quiet for 5 minutes? Ready? Go. And if a stressful thought interrupts your mind, just acknowledge it and send it away. And that's it. 5 minutes of uninterrupted time. How do you feel? I feel good.
I don't want to go back to work now.
Oh, but hey, look.
I confess I went through going through my to-do list in my head to like feeling like tired. So I think that's probably good.
It is a good tired.
Yeah, it's a good
I thought
tired,
that was neat.
relaxed
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah. So she talks about that at the end of the book. She calls it a soul shavasana. It's about just, put time for that on your calendar. Think about doing that. It's 5 minutes. It feels like a long time, doesn't it? 5 minutes. But it also it's pretty neat. I think I'm going to do that more often. I would love to do that at the end of every book club meeting. But well, thanks, y'all. This was interesting. This was very good. Before you go, let's see. Lisa, pick a number between 1 and 8.
7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Beth Boyson. Beth, you get a free copy of James Clear's Atomic Habits, our book for next month. Should be really awesome. Another, very much a good start of the year book. And February, we already have our book selected. It's going to be Mark Aaron Polger's next book, which is Library Signage, Wayfinding, and Design. Mark volunteered. Thought it would be a great idea. So we're going to see that. Beth, yeah, I'll contact you through Facebook Messenger. So keep an eye out for that, and we can get all your information, and I can get that to you in whatever format works for you. So that's everything. Hope you're all having wonderful holidays. Thank you so much for coming this week, and thank you all who come frequently, and thank you all for coming for the first time. And that's it. We'll meet again in about a month. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Happy New Year.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank y'all.